All right, guys, we are back for another episode of the On Call Empath. I think you're going to like this episode. So, I've been getting a lot of questions to to ask about how do we know we're dealing with a narcissist or a manipulator. And there's one sure shot way that seems to work, at least for me, every time, and it's the art of saying no. So basically, what you do is if there's somebody that you work with, or maybe a boss, a family member, somebody that you're married to, see what happens when you say no to them. Check out their behavior. Do they get upset? Do they not say anything? Do they give you like the silent treatment and then bring it up later? What are some of the things that you notice, especially as an empath? We can sense these things, and they even say that even the silent treatment in itself, it causes almost like sort of like a like physical pain when you don't communicate or you shut off all communication. So in this episode, I want to dive into that. And guys, if you are dealing with somebody that's a narcissist or living with one, this is something you definitely don't want to miss. Stay tuned. Let's get started. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about how to say no and watch exactly what happens, not only to the other person and how they react to you, but also yourself. As an empath, sometimes we get anxiety. We start fumbling our words. We look down. Our body language is kind of like crossed, like trying to get away. And we don't want to be around that person, or we're hiding from them, or avoiding them, which is a big one. A lot of the clients that I do coach always tell me that when they say no to somebody that they know that they're going to, explode or have rage towards them, that is a very good indication that that is a unstable person, because a normal person, when you say no to, is not going to blow up, not going to use tactics against you, take things away, give you the silent treatment. Normal people just don't do that. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, so when you say no to somebody, look them straight in the eye and say no. Now, here's the thing. A lot of you guys that are listening, that might be like the worst thing that you can do. You have a hard time asserting yourself, and that's okay, because I'm going to talk to you about how you can slowly get to the point of saying no. So I want to start off at the very beginning. So let's say you're living with somebody, or maybe you have a boss that you report to who gets very defensive or puts you down in front of other people, or possibly just gives you the silent treatment when you say, no, I don't want to work those extra hours, or no, I'm not going to this party afterwards. Or even if you're with a spouse, or you're married to somebody, you've had a long week and you just don't feel like doing something, and so you speak your mind, and all of a sudden it's turned on you that you are the bad person. That's where gaslighting comes in. They make you think that you're crazy, that you're being unreasonable. But hopefully by the time this video is over, you know that it is not you. It is the other person, because that's what they're good at. And typically these other people that I'm talking about are narcissists, manipulators, toxic people. These are the people that empaths flock to. And that's one of the things that I see with a lot of my clients, that we continue to go to these types of people for acceptance. Sometimes they control us by what? Financial. They control us by shame. So if we don't do something, they'll shame us. They'll make us feel bad. So keep that in mind when next time when you start doing these things that I'm about to talk about. I want you to keep track of what's going on in your mind. You can't, like, do you feel like the walls are closing in? What is it that you are experiencing when you say the simple words of no? Because that seems to be like the worst thing for narcissists to do. And that kind of leads to people pleasing and so on and so forth. Because a lot of us, we want to people please. We want them to accept us. And if they don't, our whole energy is off. But here's the thing, guys, you cannot get everyone to accept you. Not everyone's going to like you. In fact, I even play like, I turn things around, and I even tell people, try to you say that you're so likable, everyone thinks that you're nice, you're always agreeable. Well, why don't we try something different? Why don't we try to see how many people that you can, you know, get upset? I mean, think about that. You get up and your whole life you've been trying to please everybody, but I want you to do the opposite. How hard would that be for you? I want you to think about that. You are going to come across every person and you're going to speak your mind, meaning you're not going to hold back. For some people that's not an option. And that would scare them half to death to tell them how they're thinking. Now, one before we begin, I want to talk to you about a couple things that you can do to protect yourself when you say no. So let's say that you start small and you start saying no to people you don't know, like, I don't know, someone at the store, and then you kind of move up and you keep doing it every day. You say no to one person. When you say no, that there's not going to be too much backlash or confrontation or any consequences. We're going to work up to the person that you really want to say no to. That could be a boss, it could be even your kids, it could be your husband, your wife, but we're going to get to that. But the first thing I want to talk about is mirroring. So mirroring is basically behavior is if somebody's like talking in a certain tone or they're giving a certain body language or a certain feel, and I'm sure a lot of you empaths know what I'm talking about, you are going to mirror that. So if they're being a certain way, you're going to act a certain way. If they're giving you one word answers, you're going to give one word answers. So it's kind of like a mirror. You think about putting a mirror in front of you, and that's what you're going to be doing with this person. um, but more importantly, this will give you a basically, like, it's like a test to see if this person is manipulative, because most people, when you say no to, they're not going to blow up at you, they're not going to make you feel like shit, they're not going to try to bring you down. But you can all do this very calmly. You don't have to go to their level and scream. You don't have to get revenge. You don't have to go out of your way to let everybody know what they're doing. All I'm asking is to look them right in the eyes and say no. And that's it. Whatever sensation you feel, I want you to count backwards: 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and just let it go. Because the minute you say no, you're going to have all these sensations. The person across from you that you're saying no to is probably going to pressure you. They're going to probably make a comment. Maybe they'll say you're not a team player, like, I'm disappointed in you. Or they might even go further and start calling you names and exploding at you. So just know that there are many possibilities, but whatever happens, it doesn't matter what their reaction is. The only thing that matters is how you deal with it. So when you say no, nothing else matters. Nothing in the world matters, not even what the person is screaming. Let them scream. It's kind of like, when a baby screams, when they've done something, you we tend to go right to them, soothe them, and make sure that they stop crying. Well, in a narcissist, that's what they're expecting you to do. They're expecting you to basically give in and get what they want, because they don't care about you. They can care two shits about you. So think about that. If they are in control and they know that you are starting to put boundaries and you're starting to put your foot down, what do you think is going to happen? Number one, they're going to push back. Number two, they're going to probably start using tactics like gaslighting. They'll probably start threatening. They'll start taking stuff away. And if you're tied to them financially, guess what? They're going to cut you off. They're going to threaten to start taking things away until you tap, until you give in. So this is what I want to get at in this video, that if you are in a position where you can't leave, and you're stuck, there's nowhere for you to go, and you're dependent on this person, I want you to take as much responsibility for everything that you possibly can, that this person doesn't control over you. So maybe they control the money aspect, maybe they control, like, who you talk to and who what you do with your time, but everything else you control as much as you possibly can, until you get to a safe place, until you get that exit plan going. So right now you might be listening to this podcast and you don't have any plan. You're like, well, saying no is just out of the question because I know if I do that, I'm going to be out of a job, or if I do that, I'm going to get physically beaten, or I'm going to be like verbally, mentally abused, So you definitely don't want to just do this on a whim. You want to have a game plan in place before you even start doing this, saying no to a narcissist or a manipulator. One of the biggest things is starting off small. So you're going to start doing it with maybe your friends, role play with a therapist, maybe role play with a coach. I know with a lot of my clients, I do role play in our sessions. So we'll make a scenario and I'm going to start doing things that they're going to have to choose, and they'll be like, "Well, I'm feeling uncomfortable." And I'll still go along and say, "Okay, I need you to tell me no." And we're going to do that over and over until it gets like to a point where they feel that they can go out and start doing it just with strangers. And then we move up to all the way to the narcissist. But before we even get to that game plan, they already have all their ducks in a row. They know that if A happens, they have B, and so they always have something to fall back on. So before we even get to that big mountain, we're going to start small. But during that time, we're going to basically make sure that you have a good game plan, a good exit plan. So if they do threaten to, to do something and they pull that card on you, you already two steps ahead of the game. So before we go, I want you to focus on these couple things and just know that if you are having any strong problems, if you are having any issues with this, feel free to reach out to me. I work with people all over the world that deals with this, especially with those who are in a narcissist relationship. But getting the courage and putting yourself first is very tough. It is very tough for empaths, but it can be done. And I'm living proof of it. I've done it, and I've coached hundreds of clients all over the world to gain that confidence, to gain that courage. So what can you do to start working on that right away, even before you start doing, start saying no, before you start doing this, even before you start saying no and you start adapting this, it's okay to analyze your where you are on the level. I mean, if you have low self-esteem, if you're depressed, if you have anxiety, all these things are going to play a significant role of you saying no. So that's the first thing that you need to kind of get in check. So once you have that confidence, it's just going to be that much easier to say no to whoever you want. And just know, in this whole world, there's you do not have to feel pressured or powerless against anyone. And I don't care who this is. I don't care if they're a powerful person and the CEO of a company. You yourself have an obligation to put yourself first. And that is not selfish. When you really understand that, when you really sit down and you can really feel that right here in your chest, that you matter more than everybody else, because you have to fill your cup before you can help others, right? So I teach people to first put themselves first. So number two is never try to change anyone. So even if like you tell me like, hey, I've tried saying no, it doesn't work, or I've tried to change this person to see my perspective. So my question to you is, why are you even wasting that energy to change somebody? It doesn't make sense. People are going to do what they're going to do, especially narcissists. There's no way you're going to be able to change a narcissist. They might go along with your game plan and then try to go back on their word, but there's no way you can change somebody or make people do anything that they don't want to. So you have to make a decision and say that uh, I'm going to put boundaries, and this is how it is. To now, again, to get to that point, you're going to have to take some, these baby steps, start small. Now, like what you can do immediately after watching this, you can start practicing small things, like you can use one word answers. You can start mirroring, like I spoke before. You want to mimic what they're doing. So if they're talking in a certain tone, you match that. And so you guys, by the way, the main goal of this whole thing is to get away, is to buy time, is to go non-contact. So if you're in a dead end job and you're working for a narcissist boss and you have no other options, no jobs, nothing that could match what you're making, and so you have to take it. So I'll have a lot of people in that position as well. Well, maybe it's time where every day you start looking at something else, maybe another skill, another trade, but your main goal is the exit plan. It might take a year, it might take 2 years, it might take longer, it might be shorter. It just depends on how bad the situation is. Because I'll tell you one thing, if you keep going like this, in your mental state, your overall energy, especially empaths, it starts to deteriorate over time, and they'll get to a point where you'll cross a line, and it'll be too much to handle, and then you'll be scrambling to get out, and it's like a burning building when it's on fire and all the exits are closed. You don't want to get to that point. So before, even when you smell smoke, that's when you start using this. That's when you start researching. Maybe you start looking at other jobs, other trades. Or if you're in a bad relationship, that's when you start maybe working on yourself to get confidence, talking to friends, going to coaches like myself, going to a therapist, going to somebody, anybody that could kind of be with you, that could support you through this journey, so you can get to that day where you can just be like, peace, deuces, you exit, no contact, change your number, it's done, and then you start your new life. That is the goal. That's the main thing that's what I want people to take away from this video is, yeah, you can say no to all types of people, and you can tell what type of person that is by saying no. But in life, you're going to get so many people that may not even be narcissists, that maybe just have a bad day and blow up at you. So you can't really just say that that person's a narcissist. Maybe they had a death in the family, or maybe they're going through a tough time and they lost it. And there are a lot of people like that as well. So you have to kind of take it with a grain of salt. Like when you ask somebody, or you make these boundaries, that no matter what the response is from that other person, if they're rageful, or even if they're really, they don't give you a hard time, they're like, oh, I understand, I totally get it. Whatever the other person says, whether they're cooperative or they're not, it has no bearing on what you're going to do, because you've already made a decision of saying no, and there's nobody in the world that's going to change that. When you can get to that point and not feel those feelings like guilt, shame, obligation, fear of guilt, all those things, you're going to feel those in the beginning for sure. But I can guarantee you this, if you start saying no more often, that icky feeling is going to start to fade and fade, and you'll get to a point where it's not going to sting as much. Even when I say no, it kind of feels uncomfortable. So, and I've helped so many people on this. So why am I feeling uncomfortable? Well, I know I'm an empath, and I try not to put too much pressure in myself, because I know that even if I, even if I'm a little bit pressured to do something and I don't want to, it's okay also to change my mind. And I want to repeat that. If you said yes to somebody and then you decided, well, maybe, you know, it's not a good idea, and you're afraid that they're going to think that, well, you've already said yes and now you're going back on your word. Here's the deal, guys. You don't have to explain yourself. And that goes for anything in life. If you feel that maybe at that time it sounded good, but like later you thought about it, and that's why it's so big to kind of not give a final answer to people. I know a lot of people do contact me for promotional stuff, podcast guests. I've had hundreds of people that asks to be on the podcast and things like that. And even if I know that person that's going to be an excellent fit and they're a high profile guest, I will tell them, well, let me get back to you. Or, if there's somebody that I don't think that they're a good fit, I'll still hear what they have to say, but then I will also tell them, like, I don't think this is a good fit at this time. Does that hurt? Does that sting? Yes. But in order for this podcast to be successful, I have to make sure that I possibly get the absolute best guest for my audience, that it aligns with the show and the best interest. It's more than me. It's not me saying no. it's the greater good for everybody. So, but I don't expect, anyone to understand that but myself. So once I can break it down like that, things start to make sense in my head, and then saying no becomes like second nature. So I hope you guys got something out of this. Please like and share this video. Stay tuned for the next episode. Also, if you need any coaching, check my link out in the bio. I'd be love to work with you. I have a couple openings coming up and a free session if you like to take advantage of that. I have a code in the bottom that you can use. So just use that, and I'd be happy to do a one-on-one session, one free session for you. So stay tuned for the next episode, and always keep moving forward. And we are out.